Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. Time to dive into the charts here and see how we did this week. So yeah, Bitcoin printed some new all-time highs, which was pretty great. I made a little bit of a video during the beginning of the week, but yeah, we had some signs, early signs of strength here. I have this projection here basically projecting this move off of this point, just to give us some insights. We would want to see strength in the next move to indicate more buyers are stepping in. And so the subtle signs of strength, basically, I mean, we saw resistance at this level, which we would expect. And we held above this major swing top here. It's a weekly swing top. We held above that for over a week, and then we had several days close above this level. We had all this selling come in, actually putting in a higher low, closing above this 50% level. I like to see a few days, at least 3 days above a certain level to give a little bit more confidence that that's going to play out. So anyhow, we broke above the all-time high, which was basically right around 10. Let's see what it was. It's not too terribly important, but yeah, 109 level, and we did break above that. And we had I think, well, we had one daily close above that level anyhow. But actually we were printing many all-time high closes because before that, the highest closing price was like around the 106 level. So either way, many closes above these all-time highs. Buyers are coming in. I like to see that. I mean, eventually we are due for a correction, but the kind of want to share some of my experience with this rally. This whole rally, everyone's expecting a pullback, myself included, because we've just been through two major periods of downturn where, once you start going down, you're down for a couple months. And then this was 8 months. That's a long time. That's well over half a year of just sideways chop. And it took a while to be convincing that, that we were going up. So, but this particular move never showed us that pullback. And so again, people are basically forced to come in and buy at higher prices because there's just been no meaningful dip out of these lows. And so, and maybe that comes and but I suspect that that will get bought up because anybody who didn't believe it down here certainly believes it up here. And I mean, effectively, we do see buying coming in. I mean, we even see buying coming in on a weekend, which usually is typically lower volume than the week. We had this big scary day Friday, which really all it was doing was coming back to, test the highs here. That's pretty normal price action. And if I bring up the M2 money supply, which correlates with Bitcoin's price almost like 90% or so, we're seeing that the next week, this coming week, has another giant upsurge, and any time other time we've seen that has basically corresponded with these larger moves in Bitcoin. So does it have to happen? No, it does not. But the whole point isn't necessarily about trying to predict where a price is going to go next week or in the next 2 weeks. We're in a macro bull market. We're seeing clear signs of strength, and we're seeing no major signs of overheated or overbought or the sentiment hasn't gone crazy either. We have ticked into extreme greed a little bit. Maybe that marks a local top, but certainly doesn't mean we're overcooked for the cycle. So I still am expecting to see, some resistance around this 113, 114,000 level. And if we do touch and kind of get a pullback here, it'll be interesting to see because a fourth time breakout might happen on this diagonal. They're a little bit stronger when they're on a horizontal, but that signal can still play out on a diagonal. So we'll just kind of see how that goes. And we're still paying attention to, like I said, this extension here. I like to use these extensions just to kind of get an idea. Well, if it repeats this move, where does that put it? If it did a full repeat of that move, pops us out over this trend line into that 117 area, comes up to the 1.5 level, which would be 1.5 times that move, which is a really very common place for if you're in a strong market. It's a very common place for things to turn around and maybe a top to form. So these are all just things to keep in mind. I'm not trying to never trying to pick the top, never trying to pick the exact bottom, try to take, a slice out of the middle. But that's where Bitcoin is right now. And Ethereum, definitely finally showing some strength after basically being down for, you know, a very, very long time. But if you were to zoom way out on this chart, um, yeah, if you were to pull, yeah, if we were gonna do this, this is a really ugly chart, but I'm just gonna draw it anyway, maybe in white so we can kind of see we are forming this kind of wedge-ish pattern that it did last cycle. And a lot of times these will, you know, resolve to the upside. So anyhow, while watching that, and basically, what I'm expecting is Bitcoin's going to need to lead the way with the altcoins. And if we go to ETH BTC, like I said, it's the very first time ETH BTC has shown any kind of real strength or intention, but I want to start see it breaking tops. And this white line is our overbalance in time and price for Ethereum. So we won't have any confirmation that Ethereum is actually going to be um, outrunning Bitcoin until the middle of July. All right. So if we well, as far as the time goes and whether we beat it in price or not, obviously remains to be seen. But so anyway, we need to wait for more confirmation on that. But typically in the past, when ETH BTC bottoms, that rally right there is the altcoin season, basically final stages, final mania. We've been in a bull market for 2.5 years now, maybe 3 years even. I'd have to time it out, but we've been in a bull market for a couple years now. And you typically this last push in the altcoins happens in the later cycle. So yeah, I think that's basically what we're bracing for, and we will just have to see how Bitcoin dominance reacts. Not no convincing top here yet. I mean, timing wise, it seems to make sense. We are in a resistance zone. Maybe this was some kind of blow off here, but we are still sitting in strong territory for Bitcoin dominance. And I think the Bitcoin dominance will actually continue really until something finally actually breaks and we turn the corner on potential alt season. It's still all potential because we see this bar here. We're closing above this trend line. We did dip below it during the week. If I were to be on the daily, obviously we came down here, but a close above this level still indicates to me that we haven't decided where we're going yet. We're kind of just like we're really crunched into this rock in a hard place, and I would like to see probably in the next couple of weeks this would need to break significantly. Otherwise, we're probably going to have some more dollars coming out of the market, basically coming out of the altcoins. But we will just have to see how that goes in time. This is everything that we're tracking. These signals take weeks to play out, so we're just kind of seeing how we can interpret this and how it may influence our trading. So luckily, as far as the USDT dominance goes, we got in a lot of our positions kind of around the break of this 50% level. This crashed down. This sent a lot of money into the altcoins, which triggered a lot of signals for us to get into the market. And so we're just having a breather right now, and that's perfectly normal, perfectly natural. I think I like that there's still a little bit of fear in the market over that Friday drop kind of scared people. I like that because typically towards the end stages of these cycles, any market basically usually has some kind of euphoric blow off top where everyone is convinced. Anybody who was ever bearish or thought the market was going down finally has turned bullish, and everybody is correct for a very short amount of time. Because right now you still have bulls and bears fighting over, are we bullish, are we bearish? We've been in a bull market, but there's still this whole time been people calling for the top and it's all over and that will happen. At the very end, the bears will flip. They will say, oh, yeah, yeah, we're in a bull market, even though prices have been going up for several years. And that's typically when you have a lot less time left in the cycle. So, unfortunately, we are at the very later stages of the cycle. And so, you know, unfortunately, kind of late to the party at this point, but that's okay because we're at the very beginning of alt season. So this is why this happens is because Bitcoin's been going up for 2.5 years and people have been fading it for 2.5 years. And now that Bitcoin's finally eclipsed 100,000, going from $15,000 a coin to $100,000. Now people believe in it, but oh shit, I missed the bandwagon on Bitcoin. Now I have to go into something that's going to give me more multiples or similar multiples. You know, Bitcoin just did a 6x. Okay, now I got to go find something else that's going to give me a 10x or whatever. And they basically people start chasing higher multiples because they missed the boat on Bitcoin because they were emotional and they didn't have a long-term investor mindset. They didn't understand. They didn't have belief in the network effects of Bitcoin or the technology, or they didn't do their research basically. And so now that they faded Bitcoin for 2.5 years, the only way to make their money is to jump into the altcoins, and that's basically what we're trading right now. So this is one of my favorite charts. I have a lot of money in Hyperliquid. This is just something I wanted to share. This one's definitely leading the charge here. Breaking out of all-time highs or previous all-time highs. This one's a monster. I've been talking about it on the show for a long time. And in fact, I had one of my first earlier uh, trades down in these levels. You know, I cashed in probably around this level here because it was a short-term thing and we didn't have a lot of market confirmation. And I have a lot of spot in this, and so I was just kind of trading this little range here because I put quite a bit of money, you know, into these levels. I think my average price was about there. So I basically put in a little trade, made a little money up to this point. That's where my average price was. I was happy to walk away. Hyperliquid's definitely leading the charge, looking very, very strong. I got into a couple other little trades on a different account that's actually not part of the 5K challenge. But so also too, I think I posted in the group, and we got this account up to like $18,000, right? So I want to say full disclosure, like the account balance in that uh, is no longer 18,000, it's about 12,000. So while we did turn that 5K into 18,000, this is the volatility that people are talking about. This is the volatility that's dangerous, and people will do one of two things. They'll either hold it for forever because they think it's going to the moon forever, or they will get into a position where they're profitable and they will sell as soon as the market goes down. Like I can guarantee you, if I sold right now, I mean, the journey from that 12,000 to 18,000 will happen in a couple days when the liquidity comes back into the market, which we're tracking the liquidity. So, but I just wanted to give you that idea as a reference because it's like, sure, that's great. It was 18,000 at one point, but that's kind of the high water mark, and that's not you have to be aware of what your goals are and where your targets are or the signals that you're looking to get out of the market. And so for me, it's like my signals to get into the market were happening on a weekly time frame. And so that thesis shouldn't change day to day because the whole thesis is based on like a weekly time frame. One candle is a week, and that's where I'm getting my signals. And so if I'm invalidated, that should take a couple of weeks. I mean, it can happen in a couple of days. Obviously, the markets move quick, and but either way, what I'm saying is like, I can't be looking at this thing day to day and deciding based on the account balance whether I'm going to be in this trade or not, right? So that is a lesson to learn where it doesn't bother me at all that the account is down. What is that? $6,000. Like it really doesn't matter because my end game is selling the majority of my position on the way up and then leaving 25% maybe for the rest of the move. And this could go on for the next 6, 8 months potentially, but it's a very short. The window is becoming much much shorter, and so basically playing heavy defense right now. Like I'm getting pretty aggressive with going long on some of my on the 5K challenge that we're doing. But the other positions I've had for months, some of them for um, a couple years. And so it'll definitely be time to be starting to play some defense on those. So anyhow, let's see. Okay, so going back to the exchange data, that's basically really it for me is the USDT dominance. We're waiting for that to potentially break down lower. It's in a rock and a hard place, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I wasn't really expecting altcoins to just blast off in the near future because of that resistance because it's been in play for over a decade, and it's let me just actually go back to that chart. Um, if we zoom out, I know this is such a messy chart. All these little areas down here are just areas of potential support where I would expect buying to come in. I have no idea how far this thing would go if it actually did break through this fourth time breakout and we got, I mean, that really could be the ultimate omega altcoin season to end all altcoin seasons and everybody, is driving Lambos at the end of it. It can certainly happen until we get the real estate market rolling over and we end up, having that multi-year bear market in the future. I think that that is definitely possible. I think it's mostly probable because it's a real estate cycle that's we have several hundred years of history on, and it just always happens, and it's a product of leverage. And I won't get super into it, but um, really, what I would like to see is for this, I mean, any break of this to come down into this zone where we've been chopping around, what might happen, we may not break these levels. If we do, great, then we just hands off the wheel and we're literally going to the moon and we're on a fast rocket ship and it's going to be absolutely crazy. And that will be the case in a lot of these altcoins where the volatility is going to increase. People who are later and later this show are going to start aping in a big way. But one thing I do like seeing is increased volume on the way down. I do like seeing that. But the other potential is we could see something like this, which is what happened in the past. I won't go back to it too much, but where we did basically come down to this trend line, chop around, and that was just kind of a flip, like a slosh of liquidity around. So there's still tradable ranges and still definitely some good trades to be had there as the liquidity jumps from narrative to narrative and token to token. I think every token and coin's really going to have their day in the sun where it's going to be getting a piece of the action, a little piece of the several trillion dollars that potentially could enter the space. And uh, but that's what we're going to track. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. If it breaks, and if it does breach this, we have a couple levels to look for support. And if it reaches any of these levels, fucking sell, because honestly, like, this was just a gift from God that this thing came down to these levels at all, and all that money ended up into the altcoin space. And so you just take what you can get because it's never happened in history, has not broken this line in history. And if it were to do that, I would say it's most likely going to happen this cycle because it's the blow off top of the real estate cycle. It's like all the blow off top to all markets for the next 20 years basically, and the end of that cycle. And so I could see it happening, but we just don't know, and we got to keep a level head and see what the market's actually telling us. And right now, we're seeing support where we would expect support, and any increase in this chart and closes above these levels here, we're gonna have to rethink our situation. But right now, I'm really pleased with where we're at, and I think that there's more upside to come. We are running out of time, which is a little bit freaky, but that's part of it, is that the most aggressive phase is the shortest phase, and that's just the stark reality. So getting into the market right now, now that things are on the climb, pretty dangerous. So basically, getting into the market, as I've been talking about, like if I go into just about any of these on a daily time frame, and that's the RSI. Let me get back to let's go average true range, which is basically it's a measure of, you can either do it as a percentage, up or down, or the dollar amount. How much do these bars range? And as you can see, as things get very exciting, you can see that each bar, as it moves, will move a much larger dollar amount in one way or the other. So the volatility increases as prices go up because the emotions are higher, and you really want to be getting in while the emotions are much lower. And I think I've marked it up on a few of these charts, but I basically bought ENA on a break of this level here, which put it in a weekly uptrend. At the same time, the volatility was pretty much at the smack dab below, and we had an uptick in volatility with an increase in price. That's a good sign because volatility is a little bit more predictive than price. And yeah, so I'm kind of surprised actually to see. I usually mark these up. Oh, I think it's because I exited out of the indicator and then put it back on. But yeah, usually I like to mark the volatility where I enter, because typically it is the low point. And did the same thing here. We entered, let me see where my entry is. Down here, yeah, we entered on a break of this right here. And on the volatility chart, smack dab. I mean, we nailed it. I mean, I absolutely love getting in at low volatility times because it's just a sneaky move. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody's paying any mind to Injective, was a very hyped, um, which was a very hyped project. And well, it's going up, everybody's convinced about how it's any token, pick and choose any of them. When the prices are going up, everybody's convinced that it's going to the moon. And when prices are going down, everybody's convinced that it's a scam. So it's like buy crypto when everyone hates it and sell it when everyone loves it. Everybody hates it down at these levels. It drew back 90%. Everybody was waiting to make their millions when they bought in up here, and they just totally took it in the ass. And everything's down 80, 90%. And basically, the last people to sell are the people that you're buying from. And you have to think about it like, if I'm going to be doing this long term, then I have to basically do the opposite of what most people do. What most people do is they buy the tops and they sell the bottoms, even though the whole point is to buy low and sell high. It's just a whole other ball game, and it's very difficult to do mentally, and in the psychology of it, it's very hard to do because why would I want this when it's down here? Because it just looks like trash. The whole recent past tells me that it's trash, and then when it's up here, the whole recent past tells me that it's the greatest. So, and there's a little bit of reverse psychology that you have to have, and to get, what most people don't make money in the markets, so you have to do what most people don't do, and you have to think when you're buying, if you're going to be buying low and selling high. Well, first of all, are you buying low? Okay, well, we bought low. Are you buying in a time where people are buying or selling? Well, we were buying. Well, we waited for confirmation. That was the safer bet. But after the selling had been exhausted effectively. And so it's like, do I want to buy people's losses or buy their profits? Because if you buy up here, you're buying someone else's profits. They're selling to you. You're getting a fair deal. You're asking for it because you say, "Ooh, I want this." And so you're asking for it. So you buy the thing, and then it goes down, and then you blame everybody else. That's not a fair deal. It is a fair deal because you bought it because you wanted it, because you got greedy, you didn't know what you were getting yourself into, and you bought it at the wrong time. And then now that you're coming down here, you're selling, and you're basically going to be selling to the same person, um, uh, who sold it to you up here. They're going to sell it to you up here, and they're going to buy it from you down here because they understand the psychology, and they've mastered themselves more. And that's kind of the game that you're playing. It's not even about predicting the markets. It's about mastering yourself and your own emotions and understanding what's going on. When I'm buying down in these areas and I'm getting some confirmations, obviously we have stop losses because we could be wrong. But then if we do have a loss, that's a business expense and we can walk away and it will be just fine. And we live to fight another day because we didn't lose our ass and we didn't lose our whole fucking account on one trade that we were going to just make all our millions in one trade. It's a little bit more calculated than that. So it's like I know that buying down in these levels, it's quiet. It's literally like the average true range is telling me that the volatility is out of the market. It's quiet. People have walked away. Everybody's walked away licking their wounds, and you can basically just go and pick it up at a discount because everybody hates it right now. And when this thing goes, then who am I selling to? Who are we selling to? Well, we're selling to the people who are getting into the market. Uh, this is why greed is not good. Like you aren't going to win if you come into this with a greedy mindset. You have the potential. We have the potential in this industry to make, I mean, literally millions over the next 20 years if you play your cards right, if you compound the results. And it is definitely possible. Um, I trading after going through all this, like I don't think I would necessarily, which is funny, I have a trading channel. I don't know that I would advise everybody to trade because it's um unless you know ahead of time what you're getting into, which is why I'm here because I love this environment and I love the markets and I love playing detective and while everybody else is chitter chattering about their hypothesis on this macro thing and that macro thing and all the rest of it, meanwhile everybody's decisions that every all the research that I could ever do, there are people out there with millions of dollars that spend millions of dollars in researching this economic this and everything else, and that influences their buying and their selling, and that shows up in the charts. And so really all we have to do is look at the charts. It doesn't matter why a thing is happening necessarily, because it's just going to be reflected in the chart. Are we strong? Are we weak? We have our signals. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Stack the probabilities in your favor, and and that's the best we can do. So anyway, kind of went on a more of a tirade this week, just kind of lessons to learn, I guess. And other than that, do I know if Bitcoin is going up or down uh, in the coming days? No, I have no idea because we started the day or started the weekend pretty shitty, starting to show some recovery. Either way, we're trading around all-time highs. So do I care if we get a pullback? No, because we have miles of very, very solid support beneath us, and pullbacks are a normal part of good, healthy market behavior. And basically, we have the longer term thesis of the timing of the cycle playing out just as the other timings of the cycles have played out. Liquidity is entering the market more and more. Like liquidity is on the rise in general. The dollar's coming down. Things are actually kind of lining up. The stars are still aligned for further continuation and but into the more volatile stage of the market. So that's basically where we're at. So um, anybody wishing to participate from here on out, it's a much more dangerous game. And basically, I would advise using much less capital than you would in the bear market lows. In the bear market lows, I mean, without being too crazy, you want to buy as much as you possibly can in the depths of the bear market because you could technically be out of the market at this point if you really wanted to, and you would have made your 6x. Where else in the world could you have made 600% in 3 years? That's basically 200% a year. Like where could you do that? You literally can't do that anywhere else. So everybody's trying to be I'm trading these markets because there's tradable ranges, and I was guilty and I did the same thing where I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to ape into these altcoins at the bear market lows that have strong fundamentals and this and that and blah blah blah." And like, "Yeah, okay, sure, but if you just compare it to the performance of Bitcoin over that time, you'd have been way better to park it into Bitcoin, and then out of all your 6x Bitcoin profits, you could have taken the 5,000 out and do this 5K challenge that we're doing, and basically it allows us to have fun and stay engaged in the markets and potentially make some money whilst the bulk of our portfolio is in very strong assets like Hyperliquid and SUI and Bitcoin. Those have all shown immense strength the whole time. And so basically what we can do now is we can play the human emotion side of things and understand that while liquidity is coming in, people are going to be more and more desperate to make their gains because they've been fading it for 2 years, 2.5 years, and they're seeing all their, people will start to, oh, I know this guy who made this much money on this and this much money on that. The stories will start to come out of all these profits that are being made when we basically enter a stage where most people are in profits. I mean, we're in all-time highs. I mean, really, everybody's in profit essentially. So everybody's right for a short period. And anyway, over the next coming months, as that happens, I think that's when we're basically going to be able to. We've already have our entries. Like I'm not looking to buy anything. Maybe I'll take some profits for some things, and if there's some other charts that show like we're, you know, more of a coming out of a bottoming pattern or something a new launch maybe that is launching into a very buoyant part of the market, maybe we can take a little profits and shuffle them around. Because that's basically what the traders are doing. They're taking profits from something that, like, for example, maybe some taking profits from virtuals, which we did really good. And I stuck it into something else like ENA and then bought ENA kind of down here. And so we're in the lows of where ENA is. And then another one like Sen, this is a smaller coin. It's not going to see the liquidity until usually it just trickles down. And it's kind of in a way like an indicator of where we are on the risk curve. This is a smaller token, hasn't seen the liquidity yet. It makes sense because basically we're going to need to see a bigger push in Bitcoin before we see the confidence come back into the altcoin space. And so, am I worried about this position that's down? No, I'm not worried at all. It could go against me. I could get liquidated, um, but at the same time, this one is just basically only lagging because the liquidity just hasn't found its way yet. And so, if we get good runners like Hype and ENA and Virtuals start running again, these larger caps, once we start breaking significant levels, these tops or something, maybe we can, trickle a little bit more into these, and then they're going to see their upside. I think what I'm targeting here, just on this trade here. is yeah, like a 6x, right? So maybe when we make our 2, 3, or 4x in virtuals, we can take some of those profits and put them down here into these lows and get another 6x on them. And so there's going to be so much of that happening, and it's going to be a lot, and it's going to be quick, and it's going to be crazy. And so we're gonna have to be careful because the volatility is going to increase as we go. Meaning, yeah, I've set my stop loss down here. It hasn't been triggered because the volatility um, is very, very low. It's not moving up and down very much. It's quiet, so I don't have to be worried about this thing going against me the next day because, if you see 100% move in a thing and you think I want to buy that, well, you're going to get a 50% correction on that thing the next day, well, potentially, right? But that's the idea of the volatility. So anyhow, I think we did really good with our entries. Still sitting at a solid 2x and some change without lifting a finger, taking some profits. I've actually taken some profits and used it for some of my own expenses, right? So that's kind of the beauty of this. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I do like to see. I never zoomed in on this actually. I guess let me expand this. Oh, there it is. Exactly what I was hoping to see happen in this chart is exactly what's playing out. We've broken out of the downtrend. We broke out of this double bottoming pattern. And so far, we are seeing a higher low form above these. These are higher lows. That's what we like to see. That's basically the most important part. So we will just see how this. It's always a moving target, right? And so we are seeing a low form. Um, but we will just have to see. It's not about predicting the future. It's about reading what is actually happening in the charts, in the data right now. It is a moving target, and that's basically what we're going to have to go. If we zoom way out on the weekly and the monthly, things are looking very strong, and there's no reason to get too worried one way or the other. As the volatility increases, we're going to see sharp corrections, and they're going to be scary. But you have to understand the game that you're playing. If you want to turn 5,000 into $18,000, you have to be okay with it drawing down to 12,000 and then walking that up to 20K, 30K, and then it's going to come back down to 20K and then it's going to go up to 40K, 50K. And then that's the potential of this market. I'm not dead set on those numbers, but that's basically the idea is you do have to be okay with the volatility and understand what you're getting into. Like you don't get outsized returns for free. It's taxing, it's costly, it's going to be emotional, and um, and that's just the consequence. Nothing is free in this life. You will have to pay it for one way or the other. This whole journey for the last several years for me has been very emotional, very fucking emotional. I'm looking forward to when I can walk away. Maybe I won't for another couple of years because I want to play the downside on the other end. Now that I'm kind of getting my feet under me a little bit and starting to understand more and more how to read the tape. But that's the whole point. That's the point of any trader investor. If you don't want to bother with any of this bullshit, just put as much of your paycheck into Bitcoin as you possibly can. Yes, it's probably going to get drawn down over the next several years. We may not see an all-time high for another, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years after it peaks. I have no idea. But just averaging your price down as much as you possibly can, knowing full well that Bitcoin is going to eclipse gold in market cap, which even that from here I think is like an 8x or something. So it's like there's already basically a built-in 10x in the tank. You can't get that anywhere. I mean, Jesus, like how much money would you put into a market if you knew that you were going to get 10 times the return? And I hope the question is fucking all of it. I would sell anything and everything I possibly could in order to acquire this new emerging store of value asset that is going to eventually basically, I think, absorb all of the fiat in the world eventually and absorb most of the store of value because it's just a superior store of value. Like with property, there's maintenance costs, there's taxes on it. You can't take it anywhere. It's not very liquid. It's a pain in the ass to sell. That's where most of the value is stored. And so if people understand that, oh, well, I could sell my real estate holdings or at least a portion of my real estate holdings and buy Bitcoin that never goes bad. I don't have to pay maintenance on it. I can send it anywhere in the world that I want. It's borderless, so it doesn't matter where I am in the world. It's on the Bitcoin network, which has no borders. It has no CEOs. It has no single point of failure. It's basically most like all the risk is out of. So risk return, risk adjusted. It's the best trade that we will see in our lifetimes. I can guarantee you that. This video might get 1 or 2 views, but I'm not the only one that believes that. And it's not really about a belief because it doesn't have to. It doesn't. It doesn't really matter what I think. It's just that's the narrative behind it. That's why people are doing it. And there's a saying that, though, like, what is it? Whoever has the gold makes the rules, right? Well, it's not me that's deciding that Bitcoin is going to be a store of value. It's billionaires trying to preserve billions of dollars worth of wealth, trying to preserve billions of dollars um, into something that can't deteriorate or go away or lose value. That's I think out of all the wealth in the world, half of it is just to try to store the value that you accrue in society. It's like I show up for a day, I come away, maybe I have to spend 2 hours of that on my daily expenses, but then I have 6 hours that I want to just save in my piggy bank. And you can't save it in something that's going down in value or well, I mean, you can, and people do. And that's why we can't get ahead. That's why millennials have to do something different. That's why we're pretty much forced into these markets that have these crazy outsized returns. So, as much work as it might be and emotionally taxing as it might be, I still think that this is probably, as far as where am I going to put my time, I think that hour for hour, this will be the most profitable thing that I can do in my life is to figure out how can I buy as much Bitcoin as possible. And the way I've played this cycle in particular, and I was wrong, but I wanted to use the altcoin market to get as much outsized returns as I could above and beyond what Bitcoin can do, which is very hard to do. Trust me, I've seen it, and I've seen a lot of people try, and very few succeed. And then there are the lottery ticket winners, and I'm happy for them, and that's great. That's not a sustainable model. It's not something that you want to try to get into. But what you can do is accrue as much Bitcoin as you possibly can. So, still, what my plan is to acquire as much wealth as I can this cycle with the altcoin market, and then play the downside in the bear market, but basically throw it all into Bitcoin and walk away. And I think actually I think, and there's still so much more growth in the industry. And so at the end of the next bear market, whatever's left, if there's anybody left standing, there will be very strong winners at the end of this. That's where you're going to place your bets. If you're going to bet outside of Bitcoin and bet on a business, something that can generate, revenue and returns for you, then that will be another place to go. So anyway, this has gone on much too long. This is more of a tirade, less than, the market action that we see. There's not a lot to talk about. I don't know where the market's going tomorrow or next week. Global liquidity says it's going up. Sure, maybe it's going up. But either way, I don't really care. I think we're going effectively, generally up until the end of the year, and then time's up, and it's going to be I hope it's going to be crazy. It's been waiting a long time for this. For basically wait 3.5 years for the final 200 days or something, So we'll just have to see how that goes. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If any of this was helpful at all, as far as giving some kind of perspective to the markets, cutting through the bullshit, and I'm really hoping that my experience can help others at least understand what they're getting themselves into. And I'm not here to promise anything. You're going to have to go out and you're going to have to work for it. That's the shitty thing. Like, there's no free lunch. Nobody guaranteed. Nobody's going to ring the bell. Nobody's going to ring the bell and tell you to sell at the end of this. And nobody's going to ring the bell and tell you to buy when it's time to buy. You're going to have to go in and learn a thing or two, and learn from people who are smarter than you. I mean, shit. You can hopefully I can add some value, for free. But there's other ways to do it. I mean, I pay a lot of money to listen to the perspectives of other people smarter than me and try to get my own grasp on what the market means to me, and how does that fit into my personality, into my plan. I think those are the big things that you really have to think about. It's not about how much money can I make. It's how can I change myself to attract the things that are going to bring me success. It's not about how can I become the best trader. It's like how can I manage my emotions, and it is a craft. You are going to have to hone a craft. But how can I how it, but it's a growing process, and I think that's probably why I love it so much, is because there really is no end to it. And so it should be, if you're going to do it, it should be something that you really enjoy and have fun with. Being immersed in kind of this newer technology and seeing what it can do, and the hopes and dreams that it may or may not bring, but it's still a lot of fun. So anyhow, if any of this was valuable, please just hit a like. I know I've been rambling a lot, but and throw a comment down, even if it's just thanks anyway. Like, I know that pretty much nobody's watching these videos, but it would help me out a lot if you could just at least like and then subscribe, and just leave a comment down below. Tell me what you like, dislike. What do you want to hear? I mean, I have lots of experience in these markets, and perspectives that I think are that are valuable because there's a lot of noise out there, and I just want to cut the crap. No BS trading. That's what I say. So, anyhow, come along if you want to and stay on the right side of these markets. All right. Later, guys.